So it's about 6 minutes after 7 right now. I've got another topic I can do about 10-15 minutes on.
Oh, right.
Let's go for it.
You got one? I'm gonna do this for the video recording. Let's get a break. Okay, topic number 2 tonight. I'm going to talk about a proposed amendment that I've been rattling around in my little hamster brain for quite some time, and Doug's a big fan of it, and a few other people I've talked to, and some legislators, and some people we know involved in other states are asking
The 28th Amendment.
Yeah, well, it would be the 28th Amendment. We should call it that. Everyone familiar with Citizens United?
Yes.
That was a Supreme Court, awful Supreme Court decision that sort of ruled that corporations are people, which they're not, which I'll prove to you in a few minutes. If they're not. And basically what it did is it opened the door for massive amount of corporate campaign donations in the political process, these super PACs and stuff like that. And that changed everything. So instead of having local representatives represent us locally, we've got basically 1.5 national political parties that get all their money from basically the same corporate and special interest groups that basically determine policy on a national level. So all you do is you show up, I'm from San Diego, I could put a D next to my name, and everyone in San Diego is going to vote for me because I agree with that ideology. Vote blue no matter who. This is not representative government. It has nothing to do with what it's supposed to be. This is top-down ideology that's being dictated by people that, and you win elections. In California, with 41 million people, we have 2 senators. Do you think those senators are going to get to know all 41 million constituents? No, it's never going to happen in a million years. But they say I'm an R or a D, and that's how you vote. Well, that's asinine. And this national political party system doesn't work. I want to have someone from San Diego to represent San Diego's ideology, and vice versa. Someone from Ohio should be representing Ohio's. That's how the system's supposed to work. But it doesn't, because the national political parties control the money. So how do you fix that? Well, you take away the control of the money. So I've come up with a couple simple ideas. The first one is very simple. Only registered voters can contribute to a campaign. But I'm a corporation. Well, can you vote? No. Then you're not a person. There you go. I mean, that to me, that's step one right there.
You don't have a say in the election because you don't have a voter card.
And Citizens United was saying that, oh, it's free speech. Well, corporation doesn't have free speech. Human beings do.
And only real citizens can vote.
No, I'll take it another way. Let's say, Kendrick, I own a corporation and you don't. Okay. So you have your $5,000 campaign limit. So do I. And I have my corporation that has, put 100,000 into a super PAC. Do I not have more of a voice than you?
Yep.
Yeah, because of this ridiculous rule. But if only registered voters can contribute to a political party or to any campaign, we just became equal again. That's the way it should be. Because your money is considered free speech, what you want to spend, but that's got limits, and it needs to have limits. So the rich can't buy elections, the other people that can't contribute.
But the rich try to buy elections through illegal immigration.
We'll solve that in the next amendment. Okay. All right, we'll get to that one. Simple steps. Step 2 is political contributions cannot cross state or county lines depending on the election.
Yes.
If you live in Georgia, do you really want Hollywood determining who your governor or senator or congressman is?
No.
Hell no.
I don't want them to.
If I live in Georgia, I want Georgians deciding that. So these two are a no-brainer. Now you've got every talking head politician for the last decades in Citizens United saying, let's get the money out of politics, yet none of them have proposed a darn bill to do anything about it.
And those are 2 very simple.
Those are 2 very simple. Now there's a couple things that need to be added on to that. What about soft dollar contributions? Okay, look, for example, let's say I've got a big venue. I'm a rich guy, and I just want to basically give away my venue, let some politician I favor speak. Well, that's an in-kind contribution. What's the monetary value of that? Can I do that? No, I can't. And we have laws that are okay, that are in place about in-kind contributions. They need to be enforced. What are the campaign contribution limits? They're reasonable right now. Maybe they need to be talked about. But at the end of the day, what you just did with those 2 laws and a couple of corollaries that have to be added and discussed if the national political parties can no longer control the flow of campaign funds, they no longer determine who gets to run for office. And who does determine it then? Oh, the local people. That's where we want to be. So I'm promoting this amendment. We've been calling it the Brady Amendment, but I'm way too humble to let that go forward. So we'll have to call it something else.
But you don't want to get it confused with the Brady Bill.
Exactly. Well, like the guy running for judicial appointment who didn't even know what the Brady Amendment was.
Or Brady Bunch.
Yeah, you had to go there.
No, we have to live with the Brady Amendment every day.
Where, like, I get really upset that there's all these lobbyists and everything. And that to me is running right into kind of side by side with your corporations. They're making all the deals and the rules.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is giving money to politicians so that they create draft bills for you, is that legal right now? I don't think it is. I think it's called bribing a public official.
Yeah.
It's already illegal. It's a matter of enforcing it.
Yeah.
It's always been illegal. We just don't enforce it because, oh, everyone does it. Well, that's because the people that are supposed to be enforcing it aren't going to enforce it on themselves. So perhaps we ought to look at the Missouri versus Biden model and have the states sue them to knock it off. That's the model.
Can the bureaucracy be destroyed by the states? I mean, I guess it obviously could, but it would take.
What we want
That'd
is
be
the
massive.
federal government to shrink all the way back down to its intended size. You know, how many government agencies are constitutional?
Almost a State Department.
Yeah, State Department's fine. Got it. That's what.
That's sort of it, isn't it?
Well, no, I can make an argument the CIA is legitimate because that's handling
Right,
international
foreign
affairs.
intelligence.
Yeah, I can make there's a case to be made for a few of the three-letter agencies, but not many.
That's
Department of Treasury.
Department of Defense was
no,
originally
the Treasury's the worst one.
Department of Treasury's done a lot of damage. That goes back to Hamilton conversations.
I mean, we have to have somebody in charge of the money, right?
Well, who was originally supposed to be in charge of coining money?
States. The Congress.
Congress.
The House of Representatives, because they were representing the people. So the people need to take back the power to mint coin.
So
Mhm.
we could just totally eliminate the treasury.
Shouldn't
No,
have been
no,
in
the treasury needs to exist. Somebody has to, you have to have an accountant.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was my point.
But get rid of, but you want to get rid of the Federal Reserve? Oh, we can talk.
Yes.
Now we can talk.
And the IRS.
Yeah, everything that passed, look, let's just start with wiping out 1913 and pretend it never happened. We're good to go. That's a 16.
Go back in time. You could use Jeff Lyman.
If only, but we got a chance to fix this. You
How
know,
fast would we balance the budget if we got rid of everything unconstitutional?
well, yeah, if you want to have a government or a country that functions, you can't just rip the Band-Aid off. So if I were,
Just put a hiring freeze permanent.
that's exactly right, Brady. Exactly the answer.
If
What
we
you
went
do
to
is
that.
you stop hiring new government employees, you let attrition take care of it, we reduce the size of the government. Some of the national agencies, like let's say the DEA or no, what's the environmental one?
EPA.
EPA. Okay, well, that's a state's issue. Now, so we're not gonna have 50 EPAs. What you're gonna do is each state's gonna figure out their smartest people. They'll get together with other states and we'll agree in conference of what are mutually agreeable, burdens and rules. And that's the way it's supposed to be done. There's no reason for a national EPA. These are states' issues.
Right, if one state did something wrong, polluted the river, polluted the next state, now you have a legitimate federal, you have a dispute between the states, which is the point of the federal
That is the
government.
point to set up, that's exactly right. That is a dispute between the states, and that is what the federal court system is supposed to decide. And you get remedy there and it's all that. It shouldn't
That's a
even,
one specific thing, not a. Right,
Exactly.
and then we're done.
and this goes back to the word regulate that Doug talks about all the time. He's 100% correct. Regulate, the way it was meant in the Constitution, is to put in good order. And once it's in good order, step back. We use regulate to mean, oh, I'm going to put my nose in every single part of every transaction that ever goes on. I mean, is there anything you guys do? Is there any business you do that you don't have to get a license for, or a federal license? You know, it's a giant graft.
You get your license for your Second Amendment.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So I have another question. So if Missouri makes a good example out of Biden and what not to do, do you think it'll be like spread like a wildfire to the other states and inspire them to like carry the torch of that same concept?
Yeah, the question is if this Missouri Biden goes the way I think it's going to go, will it spread like wildfire. Not like wildfire, but we now have a roadmap to how to use the state's power and the court system and the FOIA requests to get information and tell the federal government to stop doing what they're not supposed to do. You get enough of that, people are going to start asking these questions. This is an educational court case. People are going to go, hey, states do have rights. The federal government shouldn't be doing that. And, you know, we always assume somewhere around 60% of the country are the sheep that can be moved one direction or the other. I think there's a lot more on our side that are basically decent people. I think there's maybe 10% or 15% of these actually ideologues that are progressives. I'm not, that's the wrong term. I would say collectivists, socialists, what have you. Statists. Yeah, statist is a great word because they're on both sides. If you look at the political divide of right versus left, the way it's currently defined, that's a problem. Here's a dispute Doug and I have. He will say that the far right is zero government, anarchy. The far left is 100% government, that's tyranny. That could be fascism, that could be communism, that could be some theocratic types of 100% government is on the far left. Okay, and about 10% off of anarchy. You can't have anarchy because it always ends up in oligarchy anyways. The warlords take over. So you need some kind of government to maintain order so we can have commerce and raise our families. Well, the Articles of Confederation attempted to do that, the least amount of government possible while still maintaining order. Well, they didn't give it enough power. And this Articles of Confederation couldn't put down their own rebellions. So they met in Philadelphia in 1787. And they said, okay, are we going to change the Articles of Confederation or are we going to adopt a new constitution? And the new constitution came forth. Now they created a central government with those limited powers. So called 15% away from anarchy. Well, we've been drifting all the way to the left ever since. Now, because of the way we've been indoctrinated and taught to talk about right versus left, I suggest we start having the conversation, flip the axis. Zero is anarchy. At the top here, you have totalitarianism, tyranny. I think that's the way forward, and I haven't convinced Doug in 2 years to agree with me, but one of these days I will.
I that whole graph thing and the extremes, I don't remember the title of it, but it was very clearly that I read in the book.
Yeah, I've seen a couple other people espouse the idea. I personally came up with it on my own, but I've seen other people who are obviously incredibly intelligent who agree with me.
This book is, but anyway, it was verbatim what he said. I was like, ooh, that.
And so this whole right-left narrative, and I say this all the time online, right versus left is the distraction to keep us from looking up.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the puppet masters. These are the people, and they want us distracted. Right versus left, black versus white. All of this is nonsense to keep us from worrying about who are the people who are really impressing us and actually stealing, you know, our lives. And you know, once again, that's why we're here.
They just want us to turn against each other so they can take over the control.
Well, at the end of the day, the right is growing government this direction, left is growing the government this direction. But they just spend all social money for 4 years, and then we spend nationalism money out for 4 years, and it just grows in both directions.
And that's really the grift. That's why we have to, and that's from the national political parties. It's why they must be defunded. You know, we can't. The founding fathers talked quite a bit about how factions are a natural part of human behavior. You know, George Washington talked about the dangers of factions, which are we call political parties today. In his farewell address, he warned about the dangers of factions. Well, he nailed that one right because the how do I draw a blank on that? The Federalist Party, who were not Federalists, by 1798 had put in the Alien and Sedition Acts, were basically disagreeing with them in power, and she would go to jail, which is not what, and this is 11 years after the Constitution, they were already breaking it. The Federalists got destroyed in the 1800 elections, got swept out of office completely because the people of America still paid attention back then. Well, that's exactly what's going on today with what they're trying to do with censorship. It's this Alien and Sedition Act once again is being imposed upon us. Same thing Lincoln did, by the way. Another totalitarian. You know, basically Lincoln jailed thousands of people who disagree with him in the North. You know, that happened. He suspended, you know, Fourth Amendment rights, everything like that. Habeas corpus was suspended under Lincoln. You know, this is a dictator. This is a totalitarian. It can't be done in the Constitution. That's why we like to say that we live in a post-constitutional world ever since Lincoln.
But he was on the right side, so he was allowed to be a totalitarian.
Well, well, those who win determine what's right.
Right.
You know, who writes the history?
And how many people vote him as the best president ever?
Nobody.
They only know one thing that he did.
Well, he didn't even do that. He didn't free the slaves. the Emancipation Proclamation had, who wants to guess how many slaves were freed under the Emancipation Proclamation?
Zero.
The answer is zero.
It's an
The only-
executive order. They don't mean anything.
Well, even if it did mean something, the order freed no slaves in the North and freed slaves in the South, but he had no jurisdiction in the South. It was a separate country. So there was zero slaves freed under the Emancipation
It
Proclamation.
was a speech at the end of the day.
Well, no, what it was an international virtue signal because the Europeans, that kept Europe from joining the South in the war.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused about that though. Because there were four states that, four slave states that fought for the Union, so wouldn't like Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, and I
Delaware.
forget the other one.
Delaware.
Okay, would their state,
Well, not only that,
Slaves
not only
were
that,
freed?
but they admitted West Virginia into the Union after the war started, and
Right.
when West Virginia was a slave
that's when it
state.
split. West Virginia.
Five counties in Virginia didn't want to join the South; they wanted to stay in the North,
Right,
and they formed a new state. And that's an interesting question because you have these new California, these groups like the Greater Idaho, all these movements, and they're trying to use the West Virginia argument for why they can form a new state, and they can't. Not the argument they're making. There's a different argument they can make. No state. Well, the difference is Virginia had already seceded, so it wasn't protected by the Constitution. So yeah, you could take their territory.
Well, and basically half the state was saying, we don't want us to see.
Mhm.
And so obviously the federal government is gonna take their side.
And that was one of the big battle lines. That's one of the first battle lines of the Revolutionary, the War of Northern Aggression, which I like to call it. I think I'll wrap it up.
that was great,